Why shouldn't we listen to Donald Trump's vice
So ask the
president
question
and
a
chief of
different way
staff?
then, Tim.
Why shouldn't we
You
listen
ask
to
them. I'm not here. I'm not here to answer for them. I'm here to answer for me.
Alarm you?
I'm here to lay this out very simply.
You don't
very
feel
simply
at all
for the American
alarmed
people
that
and what the choices are.
Dan, you're not at all alarmed that the
The only
last
thing that alarms me
administration
is
ended
your
with people
high-pitched,
storming the
shrieking
Capitol?
voice.
In today's video, Tim Miller absolutely obliterates Dan Crenshaw in a heated showdown over his blind loyalty to Donald Trump. We've all seen Crenshaw try to have it both ways, acting like a serious conservative while still bending over backward for MAGA, but this time, Tim Miller isn't letting him off the hook. He exposes Crenshaw's pathetic Trump worship, his endless flip-flopping, and the fact that, let's be real, he's just another Republican too terrified to stand up to the man who tried to overturn democracy. Crenshaw's defenses, oof, they're beyond embarrassing. So buckle up because Tim Miller wipes the floor with Dan Crenshaw in this fiery debate.
Let me.
Yeah, you know what happened? You know what happened after that? Because I was there. You know what happened after that? A few hours later, we did our jobs and we got back to business. You know what happened? A few weeks later, Donald Trump moved out of the White House without a word. He didn't move out of the White House.
Well, no, it's not true because for starters, you didn't go back.
Am I confused or are you confused?
Who's shrieking now? For starters, you didn't go back to business. There were votes to overturn the election, and as you said, your colleague Ted Cruz of Texas voted on the side of the rioters. And then Donald Trump didn't go to the inauguration for the first time in history. He went home like a petulant child. I want to read something that Dan Crenshaw wrote. Here's Dan.
Okay, so you're mad that he didn't go to the inauguration. That's what it is.
He didn't. We didn't have a peaceful transfer of power. He didn't. In every other transition before this, the outgoing president, their team invites the incoming team in.
Okay, so
this is what we do in a normal democracy.
So let me just get this straight. Because he didn't sit there in January and watch President Biden get inaugurated.
No, Dan. Because
that's not a peaceful transition of power. That is such an absurd statement to make. But go ahead.
Okay, Dan. What about?
I'm glad you're reading quotes from my book. I appreciate it. Go ahead.
Dan, fine. Then that's not the sitting there that I care about. How about when he sat there off the Oval Office for hours watching TV while a mob of people carrying his flag attacked police officers and stormed the Capitol? The President of the United States was not on the side of the Capitol Police. He sat there and watched his DVR and he ate his well-done hamburgers and did nothing. He did nothing for the Capitol Police that stood there because he was rooting for them to lose. That is not a peaceful transfer of power. That is Donald Trump's behavior that is unacceptable. And honestly, if anybody else in American public life was running against him, I would be for them, including you, including Nikki Haley, who I voted for, including almost all of the elected Democrats.
All right, listen.
That was unacceptable behavior, Dan. That was unacceptable behavior. Do you think
many people would agree with? I thought that was unacceptable behavior, but let's move forward to
Congressman.
Congressman,
was that unacceptable behavior for you?
I don't need to answer these questions again. I did an entire podcast calling it what it was. At the moment, I was calling it what it was.
I want to move anyway, Tim. I want to move to where we are.
Talk to somebody else if you want to get.
Let's move to where we are.
I do not trust the Donald Trump administration that did child separations, that is going to have Stephen Miller in charge of the immigration regime.
Obama separated people, kids and families.
To do a mass deportation. And another good reason not to trust them is you're doing this performative thing where I'm a little bit upset about how Kamala's exaggerating on this or that. But like Donald Trump is making up just flat out lies, inhuman lies about people that are in this country illegally and planning to deport them, saying he will deport like the Haitian migrants who have legal status here in this country. He went on a national TV stage and said that they were stealing pets from their neighbors and eating them. Like, this is so mean and so inhumane. Think about
for the record, I thought that was completely wrong, and I think it backfired. It backfired hideously for him. But the bigger picture. Let me come to Dan.
How can you trust a person? Can I just say one last thing? I just don't. How can you trust a person like this? How can you trust a person whose character is like this, who will lie, who will tell you that he won when he lost, who will tell you that people here legally are eating pet animals and stealing them, who will tell you that we're not helping people who are suffering from Hurricane Helene? Like, he is a bad person that lies and tells cruel and inhumane lies.
Let me go to
all the time. How do you defend that?
You know what else would be downright insane? Watching this video without smashing that like button and hitting subscribe. Seriously, it helps a ton. Now, Crenshaw tried to downplay January 6th, acting like Trump just packed his bags and walked away. But Tim wasn't having it. Trump didn't just leave. He refused to concede, spread election lies, and for the first time in US history, skipped the peaceful transfer of power. That's not just unusual, it's dangerous. And pretending otherwise, that just proves how deep the GOP is trapped in Trump's grip. Oh, and let's talk about Trump's so-called business genius. Under his leadership, the US national debt ballooned by nearly $7.8 trillion. His administration's mass deportations and child separation policies became the norm. And don't even get me started on his disastrous trade war with China. It cost US taxpayers over $80 billion in tariffs. An absolute train wreck.
Bad orange man argument. The bad orange man.
Yeah, Dan, he's bad. You know who said he was bad? You said that he was an insane idiot.
Let Dan answer.
Like literally 2015. So and he might have gotten the cats and dogs wrong, but you know what's not wrong? Lake and Riley. That's not a fake story. Okay, here in Houston, Jocelyn Nungry. That's not a fake story. These are people who shouldn't have gotten into the country in the first place and then committed horrible rapes and murders. There are tens of thousands of more crimes that have been committed. And people are understandably upset about those crimes. Why? Because you've already committed a crime before you committed that crime. You came in illegally, and you came in illegally because this administration undid every executive order that Trump had in place to try and fix the problem, and they created a massive, massive new problem. And you say we can't trust Trump? Like, well, again, that's an emotional argument, because all we have to do is look at the history of his policies, his executive orders. No, stop interrupting me. It is an emotional argument, because an objective argument would be, okay, what is somebody going to do? Well, they already had the job once. So I have a feeling that they're probably going to do the same policies that got the border under control the first time. And they're going to immediately re-implement those policies that got the border under control. How is that an emotional argument?
You're making an emotional argument.
That's an objective argument based on history. That's based on history.
You're saying I have a feeling. This is like saying, all right, man, I got hammered at the bar, and I drove 90 miles an hour down the highway, and I spun out, and we circled around, and I landed straight. And that means I should just get hammered and drive again, because last time we barely survived with only a little insurrection. We had a mild insurrection. Look, Dan, character matters. You know that.
I'll help you out.
Dan, you wrote a whole book about this.
Okay?
Character matters. It does. In a leader, character matters. You cannot lie about people. You cannot advance racist lies. And you cannot tell people that our elections are fraudulent when they're real. You cannot tell people that they're eating pets, that the government doesn't care about you, that the country's going to end. All of these lies that he tells, that affects the country, man.
So your argument is that you do not like his character. Right? You've made that very clear. But again,
it's objective
the
point
choice
about his
on the
character, about
ballot
these lies. It's not about me.
That's fine, but then another objective point would be what our choice is in this election. And the choice is not a question, a yes or no question on whether you think Trump has a perfect character. That's not the question on the ballot. The question on the ballot is about who will do a better job running the country for the next 4 years. And this is a really interesting case where we actually have 4 years from each candidate, where we know exactly what their policies are going to be and what their outcomes are going to be. And on every metric, Trump wins on those metrics. You may still not like his character, and I'm not going to try and convince you to. But on the metrics, he wins on every single one.
That's not right, though.
Name one where he doesn't.
Right. The metrics only count for him if you stop the metrics before COVID happens, because COVID wasn't his fault. I actually agree with this. I don't blame Trump for COVID, but you can't say that all of the job loss that happened, the huge spike in crime that happened in 2020 while Trump was president, you cannot say that was not his fault because of COVID. But then everything that happened in 2021 COVID had nothing to do with any of that. That's all Biden's policies. Look, we had this huge disruption that happened under Trump. And if you actually just look at the metrics,
of course I can.
You want to say metrics. If you look at just the metrics of crime and jobs, it's better under Biden. Sorry, that's just facts.
Dan pulls the classic orange man bad defense, acting like any criticism of Trump is just emotional nonsense. But Tim, he's not letting that slide. He reminds Crenshaw that he himself used to call out Trump until he folded and started defending him just to stay relevant in the GOP. And then Crenshaw tries to claim that Trump wins on every metric? Oof. Tim shuts that down real fast with straight up facts. Trump's so-called booming economy only looked good if you completely ignore how unemployment skyrocketed to nearly 15% under his watch during COVID. And when crime spiked in 2020, Trump took zero responsibility. But when crime drops under Biden, suddenly that's just a coincidence. Crenshaw's logic is all over the place. And let's talk about character. Crenshaw tries to brush it off, but Tim hits him with the truth. Character matters. Trump lies about everything. The election, immigration, COVID, even his own record. And now, he's back, pushing even wilder policies, promising mass deportations, plotting political revenge, and even straight up saying he'd be a dictator on day one. Does that sound like a guy who should be running the country again? But hey, that's a wrap for today's video. If you're enjoying the content, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and let me know what you think in the comments below.